Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Yay,
Hello.
thank you. Welcome, and sorry about my scratchy voice, sinus allergies, I promise. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here if I was sick because I wouldn't want to make anyone else sick. But I'm Becky Tuttle. So glad to see you all today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're starting 2 minutes late, but we just got quorum. So thank you for everyone who could make it today. I know it's a busy time. We'll go ahead and get going with the agenda. Should be a pretty quick meeting today. So the first action item is approval of the TPB agenda for June 13th, 2023. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone? The motion passes. Next is the approval of the TPB minutes from May 9th, 2023. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to thoroughly enjoy them. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. I like the competition. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Chad, you are next for the director's report.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Members of the Transportation Policy Body, good afternoon. There's some status reports that staff would like to provide to you today, and also overall context for the meeting. We have Metropolitan Transportation Plan activities going on, and also some activities related to Transportation Improvement Program that is 4-year funding commitments document. With that, the first item we would like to report to you is Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And as you all know, there had been several committee meetings, technical advisory committee meetings. We recently had open house at Bike Walk Wichita place, and they were gracious to host us. And there were many volunteers who participated. And then Ashley Breyer, so Transportation Planning Manager, myself and staff, we all participated in that event. And then now our Transportation Planning Manager, Ashley Breyer, is working on reference letters and letters of support for the grant application that's upcoming. So let me request Ashley Breyer to report to you.
There's Transportation Planning Manager here. We are requesting letters of support for our Safe Streets and Roads for All Planning and Demonstration Grant application that is due on July 10th. I sent out emails, I believe it was yesterday, requesting letters of support by June 26th. So that way we can, or 27th. So we can have a little bit of time to package everything together and then submit it. Because we'd like to get it submitted before the July 4th holiday. So we're not worried about it over the holiday. And as Chad mentioned, we had our open house and I think it went great. We had some very good input, and there was a dot exercise for people to put dots on safety countermeasures that they liked that were developed at the TSTA meetings. So it was a good interactive meeting. If you have any questions about the letter of support, please let me know and I'm willing to talk to you about it or provide any assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. We also have KDOT's Vanessa Spartan and her team today as well. WAMPO staff is working with KDOT as well as various local jurisdictions to how best we can develop this comprehensive safety action plan, how best we can work towards improving safety and reduction of crashes. So we'll continue to report to you how we are progressing on that. That's item one. And the second item we would like to report to you is this is related to Transportation Improvement Program. There is a new funding that was available called Carbon Reduction Program. And WAMPO staff had a meeting yesterday, and Project Selection Committee was helping with the decision-making process. There were about $3.9 million available for the carbon reduction program. WAMPO staff is very thankful to Project Selection Committee members for making recommendations how this funding can be programmed. There were many projects, so it's a very difficult job for members of the Project Selection Committee. and they were always great in helping WAMPO in general. That the next steps for that would be those recommendations will go in the approval process, first to the TAC in the fourth Monday of June, and then followed by July 13th TPB for approval. So any questions on that? We are happy to provide additional information.
Just excited to see.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the next item we have is the tip amendments. There's a call for changes that will be open starting June 5 till June 16th for the tip amendment. And the next item on this is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan Public Engagement Update. And our Transportation Planning Manager, Ashley Burns, had been, and the staff had been working on outreach efforts. So let us request Ashley to.
Thank you. Yes, we have gone to places where people are already having events. And so we've had 5 pop-up events in May/June so far. And we have 4 more scheduled currently in June. And we're really looking for more in June and July. We also spoke to all of the City of Wichita District Advisory Board meetings, and we'll be going to the county meetings hopefully soon as well. And we will be having 10 listening sessions in June or July. 8 of them are for very specific topics, and then 2 are open for anybody who would like to participate. And we'd love to have your participation if you would be interested. There'll be specific questions to help us figure out what people want the future of transportation to look like in our area.
Thank you, Ashley. The next item we have is innovations and presentations for in the WAMPO region. If any jurisdiction have an innovative project that they would like to share, how exciting our region is, and anything that inspires other communities, we want to recognize those innovative projects. So staff would like to get in touch with you on innovations presentations in the future. The next item we have is federal certification process. There was a federal certification review in the month of May. Our federal partners, Federal Highway Administration, Cecily Cochran was here, and also Federal Transit Administration, Eva Steinman was here. Matt McDonald was also here with Federal Highway Administration, and our KDOT partners were also here. We had a 2-day session of certification process with many questions on various products of the MPO. Those products range from technical reports such as congestion management to environmental impacts, various impacts that our transportation system has. How are we monitoring all those impacts in our region? And also, how are we engaging an open process, such as, this is a public meeting as well. Everything WAMPO staff is conducting, and also the auditing portion as well. How are the funding spent? How was the UPWP developed? And what is the reporting process? So there were so many details that were discussed and reviewed. At the moment, it will all be typed and documented and made a report, and it will be provided to us soon. So at the moment, we are waiting for that report from our federal partners. So just want to provide you status on that. That occurs every 4 years, and it happened last time in 2019. Now this time it occurred in 2023 May, and then next will be 4 years from now, just to monitor how is staff complying with the federal requirements, and how are the products and the timelines of the products have been developed, that type of thing. So we'll have a report on that soon from the federal partners as well. So that way it is more accurate representation for you. Any questions on that? Happy to elaborate. Staff is here. So the next item is a regional transit implementation plan. There is a RFP that was issued on regional transit implementation plan. This RFP is seeking consulting firms to develop a study on how does that regional transportation system look like. Because, for example, Amazon is an employer. There are employees from Derby. When we visited one of recently last year, there were some employees who were expressing concerns of how can, employees from Derby can commute to the Amazon and things like that. When some of the employers are in the periphery outside the region, how can there is a seamless public transportation system? So that type of evaluation, we are seeking that study would develop and make some recommendations to us. So that's the status on that. And we had the selection committee met, and then we received those consulting firm proposals. And then we had selection committee met, and then there is a decision is almost being concluded on who would be the selected consulting team to develop and lead this project. So we will report to you by next meeting. We should be reporting to you who was selected and the contract, seeking your approval on the contract and agreement and all. So that's just an upcoming, just want to provide a status on that.
Yeah, please.
Lastly, we are looking at transportation system and its impacts on various. Today we have economic impacts of this transportation. So our team at Wichita State University, they have done a good job in identifying the key employers by sectors. We are coordinating with the Greater Wichita Partnership with Andrew Nave and his team as well, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel of the strategies that were already developed with the hard work of Greater Wichita Partnership. So therefore, the sectors that were identified by Greater Wichita Partnership are still the same. While the framework is still the same, much of the data was developed, updated with recent and most current data on employers. So that will be presented today as well. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Any questions for Chad? I do want to give a shout out to staff though for the federal certification review. They were here for 2 days. And from what I understand from Ashley, when we communicated, it went very, very well, right? And really they only found one thing that they had an issue with. And I hope this will all bring your heart happiness. We need to do a better job of monitoring how we use stamps. So if that's the only thing that they can find, is we need a new spreadsheet of how we use stamps. So if any of your municipalities or entities need a spreadsheet on how you distribute stamps, we know where to go now. Ashley's got it covered, but kudos to staff. Give them a round of applause to come to that. So good job. Super exciting news and can't wait to see the report. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda item, Chad and Kelly.
Could you?
It's for Brent Clark as freight representative on TAC.
It's a consent agenda item that the TAC membership was, there were some positions available in the TAC committee, technical advisory committee. And then one of the positions available was freight representative. So we made sure we checked with our Kelly attorney, MAP attorney, that the TAC membership is intact, and the approval process for TAC membership is through this TPB board. So that's how Kelly was part of this agenda item. So we are seeking your approval so that from next meeting onwards, we have Brent Clark from City of Valley Center, who is administrator there, to become the member of the technical advisory committee as a freight representative. Thank you.
So you are seeking a motion, correct, for Brent Clark from Valley Center to serve as the freight representative on TAC? And sorry, Kelly, for the confusion. My bad. In my notes, I was sketchy and it said if there are questions. So if there are questions, we'll defer to you. Sorry about that. Does anyone have any questions? Kelly, you're off the hook. I would entertain a motion to have Brent Clark as the freight representative on TAC.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So moved and somebody seconded. Fantastic. All those in favor say aye. Anyone?
Aye.
Congratulations, Brent Clark. Next, we have public comment. Is there anyone online or here today present who would like to have 3 minutes to make any public comments? Don't everyone run at once. All right, seeing no public comments, we'll move right into the next item, which is our action item. And this is Chad and Ashley, and it's the 2023 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ashley Briers have been great help in this amendment. And as you all know, there's periodic amendments in the Unified Planning Work Program. And Ashley, could you please help?
Yeah. So the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, is our annual budget. And we created the 2023 annual budget in December, and then we had to amend it in March. And so we're just doing another amendment here. So this amendment includes several things, including consolidating travel line items, adjusting all staff line items to reflect actual hours worked, adjusting the budget and anticipated expenditures to reflect the planned work, and then adding a accounting services item in case we need it. We don't need it at the moment, but we want to make sure we're able to if we need to go after hiring a accounting services consultant. And then adding the development of a biped mobile app. And that was based on a comment from Councilmember Fry at the last amendment in March, I believe. So the public comment period for this item was May 17th through June 1st. We did not receive any public comments. This budget of ours is made up of comprehensive planning grant funds, or CPG funds, and it requires a 20% local match. And if the amendment was approved, this UPWP would total about $2.5 million. So the action options today are to approve as presented, not approve, or approve with specific changes, and TAC recommended approving as presented. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from Ashley? And apparently be careful what comments or suggestions you make because they become fruition in a couple months or less. All right, seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the 2023 Unified Planning Work Program Amendment 2 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second by Councilmember Fry? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, discussion updates. We have KDOT Safe Systems Approach Post-Crash Care. We have Vanessa, and she's virtual, correct, Ashley?
Correct.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vanessa Spartan. I'm with Kansas Department of Transportation. I'm the Chief of Transportation Safety. Joining me here today is Susan DeCourcy from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Ashley, if you can go to the next slide. I know we're kind of tight for time, so Susan and I are going to clip through things pretty quickly and then certainly are open to questions. So Susan will kick things off first, talking about this topic of post-crash care and how not only getting emergency medical services to crash scenes, but getting them to the appropriate trauma care can help to save lives. After that, I will quickly go over different efforts that are underway in Kansas. So Susan, I'll turn things over to you if you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Next slide, please. And I'm briefly going to talk about the safe system approach for those who may not be familiar. Next slide. Thank you. There are 6 principles, which is death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared by all. Safety is proactive and redundancy is crucial. And though you can see those around the wheel, and there are 5 elements of the safe system approach, and we deal with safer people, safer roads, safer vehicles, safer speeds, and post-crash care. That QR code there can provide you with more information on that. Next slide, please. This basically just shows the results of post-crash care. The number is now 42,939 lives lost. And we know that there's an increase of 25% of severity of people in crashes, when they are treated in a hospital at level 1 or 2. And they definitely can survive by 25% if they can get to the hospital in time. Next slide, please. The National Roadway Safety Strategy complements objectives corresponding to the safe system approach. So for post-crash care, it enhances the survivability of crashes through expedient access to emergency medical care while creating a safe working environment for those who are first responders, and even preventing secondary crashes through traffic incident management practices. Next slide. And this is basically showing our responsibility does not end when a crash occurs. Caring for people injured in a crash to prevent their injuries from becoming fatal is just as critical. And so some key post-crash care actions by DOT in the National Roadway Safety Strategy is looking at the timely arrival of emergency responders, and having well-trained EMS clinicians is and can be a very major factor ensuring that a person receives medical care when they survive a crash. And this is especially critical in rural and tribal communities where response times are longer, and we know that EMS resources are more limited. Next slide, please. And so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, also known as NHTSA, has an Office of Emergency Medical Services, and our mission is we house the National 911 program, support improvement of patient care in the out-of-hospital setting on a national level. And we do this by bringing together available data and industry experts, tackling issues through collaboration with partners at the federal and national state levels, and providing awareness and education about best practices and evidence-based procedures. Next slide. These are just excerpts of the EMS Advisory Council recommendations, and it's something that we look at, and we are trying to figure out the best way to meet these recommendations. And there's another QR code that can take you to more information on those recommendations. Next slide. So basically our message to highway safety partners and stakeholders is we need to connect with state EMS and 911 officials and to really talk to them about their call times and their systems that they have out. Talking about response times and looking at more about the right care at the right time, triage using appropriate guidelines, care at the trauma facilities when possible. And what's not listed here is, but very important in the process, is how all of this is recorded and resulting. And so data relating to EMS activity and patient outcome is very important. So this is basically the transition that each piece plays. Next slide, please. And the bipartisan infrastructure law, also known as bill, provided an approximate increase of 50% in funding. And so for NHTSA, what that means for post-crash care is that it is going to support EMS communities' efforts to be able to integrate post-crash care initiatives into state highway safety programs where supported by data, which is very important, and encourages states to consider funding eligible for EMS activities with NHTSA grant funds. And then also we are strongly encouraging all stakeholders, including the EMS community, to work closely with the highway safety offices to be able to offer ideas for potential activities that may be eligible for NHTSA grant funding. And that is the end of my section, but just as a side note, we did this presentation a couple weeks ago for the Technical Advisory Committee. And one of the questions came out was, are there standards for optimal response times to a crash? And I did a little research, and there are no such standards, but there's been some research articles that shows there is an increase in motor vehicle mortality with every additional minute. So getting EMS to the crash as soon as possible with highly trained people can really make a difference between saving lives. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Vanessa.
Perfect. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I'm going to quickly go over some of the efforts underway in Kansas. So you might have heard us in prior presentations talk about our Drive to Zero coalition. That is a 22-member executive body that includes state and federal agencies, nonprofit and advocacy organizations, and one private sector partner. All of them have mission alignment to save lives on public roads in Kansas. So there are some, it's going back and forth a lot. You go to the slide with the research. Mind? Thank you. There were some prior studies along this topic of post-crash care. So in 2007, KDOT did an assessment of EMS services in the state. And in 2017, KDHE did an ambulance service assessment, kind of separate types of scope, but similar topics. And then KDOT just agreed to fund a research project that is about identifying the golden hour in rural parts of Kansas. And I'll talk about that a little bit in a future slide. So if you go to the next slide. Other things that the one that starts with KDOT at the top. Thank you. We already fund traffic incident management training, or TIMS training, and that really is about helping first responders to secure and clear the crash scene. It's about safely protecting those first responders when they are at the crash scene, and also preventing those secondary crashes. You may have heard us mention the Safety Corridor initiative that is underway. We plan to fully launch that this summer. There is a corridor just north of city of Wichita running Park City to Newton, and it's the I-135 corridor that has been identified. And we've been engaging with EMS and first responders, talking about post-crash care issues on that corridor and things that they would like to work on. We just hosted in April our annual transportation safety conference. We hosted in Wichita this year, and we had a session panel talking about post-crash care issues in Kansas. And we just assigned a staff person at KDOT to have part of their duties, I should say, is to serve as the EMS liaison for the state. So that is a new duty that we did not have as part of our State Highway Safety Office before. I mentioned the Drive to Zero Coalition before. So that body is responsible for developing the strategic highway safety plan and making sure it's implemented. And in our prior strategic highway safety plan, we were largely light on this subject of post-crash care. When we go into the update process starting in 2024, we will be taking a safe system approach, which includes incorporating post-crash care. So that coalition, that's really a diverse group of people. It's really going to be valuable in terms of diving into this topic more and figuring out what we can do strategically as a state. And then Susan mentioned the Safe Streets and Roads for All match pilot program in one of her slides. KDOT she mentioned the discretionary grant program by USDOT. KDOT is doing a match program to support local and regional agencies and applying for those discretionary grant dollars. The idea being that, we want our leadership at the local level to have the information in hand to make safety conscious decisions. If you go to the next slide. Kansas Board of EMS, or KBEMS, is one of our partners. They have an EMS database that we have entered an agreement with, that we are linking crash data with that EMS data to better understand crashes as it relates to EMS service. We have been having conversations with KDHE about linking trauma data in. They're still kind of working through the process of whether or not they're going to allow that to occur. I think a lot of it has to do with, patient confidentiality concerns and things like that. So Kansas Board of EMS also is working with the connected vehicle company regarding crash notifications. And the idea is that you know, if someone is seriously hurt in a crash, they're not able to pick up the phone and call for themselves. And so those connected vehicle, their telematic data can actually send dispatch messages to the dispatch center. So then they know to respond to a scene if there is no response to the connected vehicle calling the person. They are also looking into a future phase of work that would be linking that telematic data with the patient care report. And the idea being, you know, if let's say a car side impacts another car, they might be able to tell based on the collision, you know, is there hip trauma? Is there neck trauma? Is there other things that are potentially things that need to be prepared for at the trauma center or in the EMS response to the scene? If you go to the next slide. Okay, and then I mentioned earlier that we are funding a study to identify the golden hour in Kansas, and we have Kansas State University doing this work for us. And the idea is that we will identify and map where we have timely care and where we do not have timely post-crash care. We will have travel time matrices developed, and we will have some broad recommendations for agencies to consider. We have had a conversation about if we were to fund a future phase 2 that we could do what we call hazard-based duration models to predict the time it would take to detect a crash in some of these remote settings in the state. Now, in terms of what's involved in identifying these golden hours, so the series of maps on the right is showing you the different data points that we have. The top is showing you all of the EMS responding station or locations in the state. Some are volunteer and some are full-time staffed. The middle is showing the air ambulance locations and a 20-minute drive time from air ambulance location. And then the bottom map is showing the levels of trauma centers in the state. In the Wichita region, you guys are very lucky to have 2 level 1 trauma centers. And you are the furthest west level 1 trauma center in the state. So you get probably a lot of the serious injury crashes across Kansas that come to Wichita. You go to the next slide. And then I always like to end on this. So I talk a lot about the Drive to Zero Coalition. We also have emphasis area teams that are listed there. Anyone can be involved in this effort. It really is a stakeholder-led effort to save lives. We also have a friend of the coalition list that people can be included on. And what that basically allows you to do is you can be in listen only mode and watch those executive meetings that talk about the strategic initiatives across the state to save lives. I think that might be my last slide. If you go to one more, I think it has Susan's and my contact information. And we can open up to any questions or comments.
Any questions for Vanessa? I do have a question. The slide before the Drive to Zero, where you can become a friend of the Drive to Zero Coalition. If you want to do that, how do you do that?
You can actually just email me directly and we can get you added to that list. And then we host all those meetings through Zoom. So people can just listen in and watch and hear what's being discussed. We are going into the SHSP update in early 2024. So it will be really interesting to hear kind of how we expand into this topic area and some other areas as a group.
Can we make sure that Vanessa and Susan's email addresses are in the minutes, so that way if people want to email them to join the coalition, they can?
That'd be great.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for all your efforts. Very
Thank you.
important and appreciated.
Thank you.
Have a great day. All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have regional economic metrics. And I know we have Peter here with us. Yep. And Craig, I think, John. Yay. Good to see you again.
There we go. So actually, I'll introduce 2 of the reports we did for WAMPO. Again, I'm Craig Compton with the Center for Economic Development and Business Research. The first one is just a quick demographics and socioeconomics report. I'll gloss over a few of the elements in that and just introduce that to y'all so that you're familiar, so that you can kind of read that on your own and glean some insights. As a good introduction into our economic economic development report, which is the more robust report that we came out with. So a few of the elements that were in the demographics and socioeconomics report were this really cool graphic called a tapestry segmentation. I'll show that to you on the next slide. Again, dominant tapestry map. Another map that we have is a diversity index map, and then just a big robust data collection for demographic and income comparison profiles and an age by sex by race profile. So this is a diversity map. And this is one of the elements in the demographic socioeconomic report that we find pretty useful. The way that we scaled this is on a scale from 0 to 100. And so it is the odds that if you pick two people at random from any one of these census tracts, what are the odds that they are going to be different races? And so you can kind of see here that toward the city center, we get more diverse, kind of the darker it is, the more diverse the region is. And then as you get toward the outskirts, there's a little less diversity. And so you can kind of look at that more specifically for your own individual regions and glean some insights there. And then this is kind of the really cool graphic that I was talking about earlier. It's called tapestry segmentation. And this just gives a breakdown. We did one for the entire WAMPO region as a whole, but then we also went through each individual community within the WAMPO region and gave a report similar to this. On the left-hand side, you'll see these, it's called tapestry life modes. And these, there's a reference list on what these mean, and essentially it's groupings of different consumers and their spending patterns, their ages, their races, and so for all of these, you've got examples like affluent estates and Gen X urban, so you can kind of glean from those titles, what those mean, and it gives a breakdown of how much of each population is in one of these segments, and so this is just an example, but this is Bel Air's, and so you can see that there's a large. It's mostly dominated by this family landscapes portion, which I think is kind of predictable for Bel Air. And then the center graphs, you see the age profile, and that reverts back to Kansas in a comparison against Kansas. So those are a few of the elements in the demographic and socioeconomic profile. But we'll move on to the economic development report. We were given a list of 7 different industries by the Greater Wichita Partnership using the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS codes. They gave us a list of these for each of these industries. There were advanced manufacturing, aerospace, agriculture, energy, healthcare, IT systems and support, and transportation. And so on the right-hand side here, we've got this graph that shows the kind of the gravity of the employment of each of these sectors. So healthcare is our largest sector by employment, followed by aerospace, then transportation, advanced manufacturing, agriculture, and energy to follow those. So we'll do a quick run through of each of these sectors. We did reports for every single one of these, and this is just an introduction to the data elements that you're going to see in these reports. So in this bottom left-hand corner here is a growth matrix, and you can see it's a bubble chart. And so the x-axis is going to be employment growth from 2020 to 2021. Y-axis is going to be wage growth from the same time period. And then the actual size of the bubble is the size of the employment of each of these industries. The different bubbles are different cities that we compared Wichita against. And so for each of these, we included some stronger cities. So for advanced manufacturing, the Goshen, Indiana region it's got the largest bubble. It's got the most robust advanced manufacturing employment workforce. And that's because, they make campers and have a large camping industry in that region. And so when we think of the key players for the advanced manufacturing industry in the WAMPO region, we can think of Coleman, we can think of Case New Holland, and then Hustler Turf is another one. And when, as economists, when we think of economic development and transportation, we think of it through three different functions. We think of goods that are going inbound, we think of goods that are going outbound, and we think of the labor movement. So for Coleman, for example, the inbound goods are going to be mostly distributed via heavy highway. So, you know, any multi-axle truck, heavy freight. Same for outbound. Most of their goods are going to be palletized and ready to go on a truck. But then we also discussed the labor corridor, and they've got the main corridor via I-35 off of 37th, and that's the main access point for those 1,300 employees at Coleman. But then we've also got Hustler Turf. It's not technically in the WAMPO region, but it is in Newton. It's got a significant workforce of 800 employees, and a large portion of those employees are in the WAMPO region. So it's important to consider that corridor to get those folks, you know, to and from work. The next section we'll discuss is aerospace. This is kind of an interesting section because it actually incorporates all forms of the transportation system. So when we think of Spirit Aerosystems, we've got this unique, oh, thank you. There we go, thank you. So we've got a unique blend of rail and heavy highway. So, you know, they make those fuselages and you see them on the rail cars all the time. And so they have, you know, access and negotiation with the railway to operate. And that's one of the unique facets of their part in the transportation system. But then we also have to think of the labor access and getting labor via that main thoroughfare along the KTA. They also use, you know, Oliver and K15 to get to those entrance points. We can think about Cessna West and East and their different demands. They're using heavy highway. They're getting products via air. They're distributing products via air. And those labor access points for West is going to be along Hoover Road by the airport. And for the East location is going to be that KTA Woodlawn Pawnee route. But then more interesting portion of the discussion for aerospace is Bombardier. When we think of them, they are actually pictured here in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can kind of see toward the bottom of the image a driveway going over that road there, and that's actually a runway for an airplane. So Wichita is uniquely poised with this collection of civil engineers who have the ability to construct runways over roads and have those bridges. And so that's one of the very unique facets of you know, the Wichita kind of transportation infrastructure that poises us for this additional growth in the aerospace sector. Discussing agriculture. Now, when Greater Wichita Partnership defined agriculture, it was more through, I think, kind of agricultural processing. So, you know, we don't have a lot of farms specifically in the WAMPO region and specifically downtown, but we do have Cargill Meat Solutions. We've got Smithfield Foods. We've got Highland Dairy, and each of these comes with their own, you know, unique set of challenges. You know, Cargill has access to rail inbound and outbound, but their labor force is, you know, going to be at the new Washington location downtown. Smithfield, you know, they're going to use heavy highway on Pawnee. Highland Dairy, same thing. They're downtown. You know, they've been here for 100 years, and you know, I use this as a personal linchpin of mine. Those trucks that come in and have to make that right-hand turn on Central. So thinking of, you know, solving that challenge is an important part of the transportation conversation. And then one that we weren't able to capture, but is still in there, is Land O'Lakes Purina, and you know, they're trying to get their heavy highway trucks downtown as well. Moving on to energy, the principal employer there is going to be Koch Industries, and that's mostly going to be the labor movement. And their inbound goods and outbound goods are going to utilize heavy highway, but you know, that labor access is going to be along that hillside Oliver route via the K96 corridor or 37th via I-35. And then Frontier BG is actually in El Dorado, but again, it's important to think of getting those folks to and from work during their commutes throughout the day. OxyChem is another company located in the kind of southwest region along Ridge Road, but they also do have access to rail and heavy highway. So then when we discuss healthcare, it's such a robust industry that we had to think of it through two different lenses. So we thought of it, as Vanessa mentioned earlier, through these hospitals, we do have these two trauma centers that we need to get, emergency vehicles access to. And so in terms of economics, it's kind of based upon population, because the demand for healthcare is always going to be there. People are going to always need healthcare and need access to these hospitals. So we would call that an inelastic demand. But we can talk about Wesley and a section of Via Christi and getting access to those hospitals. They both use I-35 kind of as the main route. You'll get to Wesley via Central and Via Christi via Murdoch. So neither of them are going to use, heavy highway or any of those larger trucks to, get inbound goods. Most of that is going to be a courier or light freight for some of those medications and medical supplies. But then the doctor's offices portion of healthcare is actually so robust that we had to kind of break it down by zip code and just get a count of each zip code's total doctor's offices. The most are going to be downtown Wichita. Several of them are on those campuses of Wesley and Ascension Via Christi. But we've got almost 1,300 offices in that downtown, just in that downtown zip code alone. And so you want to think about the interconnectedness of these doctors' offices, getting folks to their primary care physicians, and this includes therapists, this includes dietitians, this includes dentists. So this is kind of just the whole sector of doctors' offices, and just includes accounts for those. So one of the things that Peter and I have been discussing, working on, is kind of a density map showing how many of these instances we have, that could better demonstrate, this instead of just the raw numbers on the chart. So that's one of the elements that we'll be considering working on. So then in terms of the IT systems and support industry, InfoSync is an interesting, case study because a large portion of their workforce is starting to work from home, and so that's important to take into consideration when we're developing a transportation plan and considering the labor movement to that specific headquarters. But then another part of that conversation is, Cox. Because they've got a large portion or a large fleet of utility vehicles that need to get in, they need to get out, and they need to have access to all of the infrastructure in Wichita in order to make their repairs and do what they do to get our systems up and running. When we think of the transportation system, that's mostly distribution of goods and services. And so the largest of these specific transportation firms is Berry Manufacturing, Berry Equipment. And so they've got their main showroom on 37th, just off of I-35. But when it comes to the transportation system, we need to think of that demand that they're going to generate with their large equipment and trying to get, scissor lifts and different pieces of freight out of their yard to whatever job site they're going to. So that's an important piece of the conversation. But then another large employer is First Student and our school bus drivers. And that really adds to the conversation of, getting not only our kids to school, but also stimulating economic development by employing these school bus drivers and giving them, good routes. So those are kind of the breakdowns of the industries, an introduction to the elements that you'll see in those reports. yeah, I'd like to, take any questions, encourage you to reach out to the CEDBR for any follow-up questions at any time. Yeah.
We're all very impressed with everything you've done here for WAMPO.
Thanks.
I don't have much to add. If you want more information, there's the link in the agenda that'll take you to the full over 100-page report once you add all the sectors together. Very, very interesting. Little bit to add, Craig was kind enough to give me all of his employment data over, I think, about 31,000 different employment locations across the WAMPO area and several other counties. So me and WAMPO staff are going to be working on creating some maps and visualization so you can see this rather than just look at graphs. But other than that, I don't have much to add. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, guys.
Craig, can I ask a question? The
Sure.
tapestry segmentation report?
Yeah.
I guess I'm not seeing that. And when I go to the QR code and see it, is that an online interactive thing or is that actually in here? I'm just missing it.
So that should be in the demographic and socioeconomic report, and then the link should be on the first page of the report. If it's not, we can update that, but there should be a link demonstrating all of those.
Let us email
Okay.
all the reports to our members. Peter, we can, after the meeting, let us email all these reports that way.
Yep.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I printed out the 7. I'm still trying to get through them, but really interesting. And when you think about what creates density, it's employment centers, right? So when we're thinking about infrastructure and what we need to be planning for, it should be based on, the data from employment centers and other things. And then also you didn't mention the housing, regional housing report, but also really rich data. I think all of us now are talking about affordable housing and homelessness and different, how it impacts our communities. So I'm going to throw out a challenge, just see who's still with us. I will buy anyone lunch who can tell me what is the city that grew their income the most from 2017 to 2021. It's a challenge. Lunch, your choice, my treat. You can say Andover, wrong. Sedgwick. Sedgwick grew their income 47% from 2017 to 2021. So that's my teaser. Go and find out where your community is. I'll throw it in another challenge next month for lunch, but really though, very cool and interesting data. So any other questions, any comments for the good of the order regarding this? I just have one more, and Ashley and Chad, I'm going to ask it. This is too cool just to sit on a website or in someone's desk like mine when they print it. What are we going to do? How are we going to get this information out? How's it going to be used?
I mean, as transportation system, how is it adequate for all these employers in the group? And how is the transportation a potential for attracting more employers like the way we are? And what are the strengths of the key employment sectors in our region? So these are all documented in our long-range transportation plan. And as we develop our long-range transportation plan, we need to be cognizant on, what is our environment, both economically or, habitat or rivers, water, everything. So this is a very good job by Craig and Jeremy Hill and staff. Documenting this as part of long-range transportation plan is a primary goal. And then beyond that, analysis such as how is congestion measured? How is access to hospitals, and all those follow from these data later on.
Yeah. And I hope this is okay. I told Peter this on Friday when we met. I'm going to try and connect you with our economic development team at the city. I think it would be great for them just to know what resources are available and what data is available. So encourage other communities to do the same if that's okay with you.
Yep, happy to help.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, thank you so much. I love this. Thank you for all your hard work.
Of course.
All right, next is committee and partnership updates from the executive committee. Just to let you know, our next committee meeting for the executive committee is August 3rd. I think it's 11, maybe, yeah, 11 to 12, and it's meets here over in the MAPD committee meeting. It's an open meeting. Anyone is welcome to attend. So we'll have another meeting before then, but just to put that on your calendar if you're interested. The Transit Spotlight Derby Dash, I know Jenny is online. Jenny, if you want to give us your update.
Hi. Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. Good afternoon. I'm Jenny Foster Farquhar, and I'm the Director of Senior Services and Transportation for the City of Derby, and was just here to provide a little bit of an update on our Derby Dash. So the mission of the Derby Dash is to provide safe, accessible, and affordable transportation to all citizens who reside within the city limits of Derby in order to enhance access to programs, services, and activities which will improve their quality of life and help maintain their choice of lifestyle. The Derby Dash began providing public transportation services in April of 2007. We're funded by the FTA as well as the City of Derby, and we also receive donations in addition to fares charged. Our fares are $2 one way, and then we do utilize donations that support rides for persons who qualify for free or reduced rides based on federal income guidelines and eligibility. So that is something nice we are able to do. The Dash operates Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., and we're an on-demand response service. We employ a full-time transportation coordinator, and we have 5 part-time drivers, most of whom this is their part-time, second time around career. We have 1 full-time vehicle in service, and then we also have a backup vehicle. This year, we've provided so far through May 3,474 rides, and we've provided that to 107 unduplicated persons. And the majority of the rides that we've been providing are for medical appointments. We have a number of persons we support who utilize the service for dialysis. We also have several persons that utilize it to access employment, other community supports and services, and then rides to and from local schools. And now with school being out of session, we have a lot of summer camps and things that we're transporting school-age children to as well.
Any questions? Anything for Jenny? Jenny, thank you for the update. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for having me join today. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for all you do.
Appreciate
Next,
it. Thank
we
you.
have with, KDOT Mike. I think he had to leave early. Mike, are you still with us? All right, thank you. Next, Wichita Metro Division KDOT Tom Hine is going to wow us with his awesome overview of North Junction and all things KDOT.
Well, we're very happy that on May 31st, we did open the northbound I-135 2-lane flyover to southbound 235 and westbound K96 as well. We had a ribbon cutting that morning with speakers from WAMPO. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And other entities that supported the project. I drove it today. It is functioning beautifully. We still have some things to work on it. The luminaires up on the bridge itself are not lit yet. We're waiting on Evergy to give us a drop. But we do have other lighting in the area. We have the big, I can't even think of what we call them now. The big lights, the big tall ones. So the area is lit, but it will improve as we get service from Evergy to feed those luminaires on the bridge itself. So that was an exciting thing, and it has certainly made the commute for people in Mays or West Wichita just much easier to get through there now. The loop ramp, incidentally, we left it open for a while, and it will close, unfortunately, tomorrow, Wednesday, June 14th. And then they will destroy that loop ramp that we all hated so much anyway. So, so if you are one of those drivers on northbound 135 and you don't pay attention and you miss the new flyover, and I don't know why you would miss it, but you will end up at 53rd Street and doing some kind of UE to get back to southbound 235. We had quite a bit of that the first few days, and so we posted a lot of messages on Which Way and other places and tried to alert the drivers that, hey, that ramp is open now and it's functioning beautifully. So,
Tom, if I may,
yes.
along those lines, I've noticed a lot of uncertainty from drivers about which lane to get in. And I noticed there's some temporary electronic signs reminding people to get in the far right lanes. Hopefully this is temporary, but if it bears out that it is maybe more long-term, what could be done to help message that without having to resort to the temporary electronic signs that are there now?
Well, I think it's just a matter of getting used to it. And, anytime we expand something like that, this happens. There's a learning curve. It's just like winter drivers, that first snowstorm, but they get over it and they learn it. And I don't know what we could do more than the way it's striped, the way it's signed, the temporary signs that we're using now. We'll wait that out and see how it happens, especially once tomorrow when we close that loop ramp, the old loop ramp, which was kind of the fallback for those people that didn't quite get it. So yeah, we'll see what happens and we'll react as need to. But
yeah, I guess I'm just worried that people are gonna cut over at the last second to get over to the far right. I think it's striped the right way. I just don't know if any improvements could be made on the signage notification. I don't know how else could be clearer, but hopefully it is temporary.
I hope. Because once you see it, it's so huge, the 2 lanes to get over to the right and use the flyover. And I think one trip over it and you learn it. So let's hope that works out. Also tomorrow, besides closing that little loop ramp there at the North Junction, we have a ribbon cutting up in the Hutch area, Nickerson. So if you've driven that road from Hutchinson to Sterling or Lyons, that it's been a 2-lane highway for a long time, and this is on new alignment with interchanges, and it's a much improved highway. I drove it the other day, Saturday, and yes, it's time to replace that little 2-lane road up there. So tomorrow we'll have another ribbon cutting similar to the one that we had on May 31st, but that'll be kind of out of WAMPO area, but I want to make you aware of that. And then we have other KDOT projects going on in the metro, some at night, some during the day. So watch for those temporary lane drops or even ramps. So it's construction season.
It is. Exciting times, orange cones and cranes, right? Any questions for Tom or comments? Yeah.
This is unrelated to your report. It was an excellent report and I love the ribbon cutting. You did a great job, Becky.
Oh, thank you.
I do have a question. I've had some concerns from people who contacted me, and I've seen it myself. The reflectivity on some of the signs in downtown Wichita along Kellogg and 135 at nighttime, the reflectivity is extremely poor on some of those directional signs. I don't know if there's a plan to replace those or improve the reflectivity on those. I don't know what's going on with that, but I just wanted to just talk about it because it's been bad for a while, and I think it doesn't appear to be anything happening that I'm aware of. So.
Yeah, we're working on a project for that. We replace them over a period of time and they do lose their reflectivity. And we saw that especially at the 135 and US 54 interchange. And we actually had our maintenance crews go up and put new badges up there. That's somewhat improved, but still the reflectivity is not there. So we have projects in the works to replace those. It's expensive and it's inconvenient for drivers, but overall it will provide a much more safe system of especially people that aren't aware of how our highway structure is. And we have a pretty simple one in Wichita, but still we need to improve the lighting and the signage. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Tom? Thank you very much. And it was exciting. WAMPO was mentioned in the Wichita Business Journal and the Beacon for participation in the North Junction ribbon cutting. So good to get some nice PR. Next, Federal Highway Administration, Rick or Matt. I didn't see if they're online. Doesn't look like it, right? All right. Anything else for the good of the order today? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? You can
Aye.
stay.